Hello, everybody. Sorry for being a little bit late. My OBS decided not to work for some reason, right? So I had to reinstall it, and now like that's also like the color might be a bit off because I didn't have time to readjust all my setting. But that's not dilly dally on that. Today I want to talk to you about like mechanics hindering roleplay. I think that's an important topic. It's an important topic for people that want to design games. It's also an important topic for people that want to that wants to just choose a game for yours, a system for your game, right, for your session. So we're gonna talk about that, and you know the drill by now, right? When there was those slide video, I tried to do the slide, go to the content beforehand, and then at the end, I'm gonna reserve some time to interact with the chat, so people are just there for the content. They don't have to sit through the whole thing. Although oftentimes the best content is in the chat interaction. So before going in, I need to remind everybody what we mean by roleplay on this channel when we talk about it, because most people in this hobby don't understand what roleplay is. So I say oftentimes, roleplaying is not just speaking in character, it's thinking in character. So decision must flow from the character's mindset, belief, and limited knowledge. And good mechanics support this by staying out of the way and not getting you out of your character mindset. So that's what we're going to call. That's the framework from what we're going to start. Right, role playing is thinking in character. It's not just like putting on a voice. It's not just like talking about it. But I did a video about that you should have watched multiple times, so you can go back and look at this if you want. But just keep that in mind as we're going to go through this conversation and talk. So that's the thing we often hear, right? It's a role-playing game, and people want to put the emphasis in the game, like saying, "Oh, you need those mechanics because like it's a game after all, right? Like you need to have a like gamey part." And obviously, you do need mechanics, right? But people that say that, right? Yes, it's a role-playing game, but the role-playing is the main element of the game. So I probably should interrupt the presentation for super chat. I always say I'm gonna take the chat at the end, but so I guess super chat is gonna be the exception. It's an incentive to send. Hello, my air trumpet has been struck by lightning. For $5, you ask, what is your favorite system for running comedy RPG session? Which system that we use last time last disaster that I had? Was it TPS? Or was it Easy D6? I think it was Easy D6. Yeah, that's if you really want to have like some good comedy, the important is like you have like good rape mechanics, because that's the basis of the comedy. Yeah, that was a disaster. I'm sorry for that. For people like when we're doing those on UNPC, those ultimate no prep challenge, right? And we would drone for tone and GM, and I had to GM this one-on-one session in a comedy tone, and it didn't go well. So yeah, okay, good mechanics will help role playing by taking care of the physics of the world and reducing negotiation and argument. So that's why like the game, it's if you don't have mechanics, everything has to be a negotiation when you say what's gonna happen, right? Like, oh, I tried to jump over the cliff. I don't think like, well, now we have those mechanics that you can just roll and we know if you made it or not. So it cut down on the argument, and you can stay more in the character mindset. You don't have to go default back to debating what actually happened, right? And oh yeah, I say like I mechanically said here doesn't mean a game is wholly bad. Obviously, like those mechanics they're kind of like thing that they might hinder role play a bit. Sometimes they're not big thing, but if you have an accumulation of them, role play is gonna really suffer, right? So sometimes like mechanics can be like, well, that's not great. It does get a bit of in the role play, but there's a way to mitigate it. And if it's just one of them, maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it's worth it for other thing, right? That's your call. But just like thing like to keep in mind when you're reading a game or when you're designing a game, and you want to say like well, is it going to be good to be a role playing? Is it this role playing game going to be good at being a role playing game, right? That's kind of like what we're discussing today here. So the three main way to kill role play. The three main ways to kill role play. The flow killer. Those are the mechanics that are cumbersome, mathy, and high mental load, right? The mechanics, like every time you have to interact with it, you have to step out of character. You cannot think in character anymore because now you have this problem to solve, this mechanic to resolve, right? So obviously this is gonna slow down the game and it takes you out of character. Immersion breaker also take you out of character. That's when like there's a like I say misalignment between characters and player knowledge. It's when you there's so much more that you need to interact with according to the world and stuff like that. You or another character. I'm gonna break down all of them like later on, but it's just like to a little like a taste of what's to come. And the metagame driver, which mechanics that rely heavily on out of character talk. I'll give you some example. First one, the flow killer, right? Too many step for resolution. Those are like the dice mechanics, for example. It can be different mechanics, but usually we see it in dice, right? When you start having like, the storyteller system is an example of that, right? For all like people love storyteller and stuff like that for different for some kind of reason. But I believe that when you make a roll and now you have to count your successes, first also like the number of to have a success in the traditional storyteller system, like the original one, right? The target number that you need to roll for a dice to be counted as success varies, and the number of success you need varies. So there's like those two variation that now like so now the GM has to tell you like how many success you need and what constitutes a success, right? So already that's not great. And then you roll your dice, and the and now you have to count the success you have. You can also explode the d10 and roll another d10 if you roll a 10. So that's another step to add. Then you have to subtract the one that you roll. So that's another step you add, right? So like, just making your roll, it's just like you take your dice, you roll them, and you say, okay, I succeed, I fail, or I have this number, and then the GM can tell you if you succeed or fail. There's like multiple step, right? It's not so big a thing, right? But it does get in the way. And at some point, like just making a roll become like some kind of load that you have to do, and it does slow down the rhythm of the game, right? Like, you cannot be in the flow and say, "Oh, I'm trying to do this," and make your roll, and "Oh, but I failed," and keep on going. Now it's, "Oh, I'm trying to do this," and yeah, I fail. No, I didn't. Like just like there's this break there that cut the flow. Like so, they're not great mechanics. So when you see those like dice mechanics, that takes and I know a lot of people like love exploding dice. I know they're exciting and stuff like that. Oh, I roll a 6 on my d6. I can roll another dice and stuff like that, right? But at some point, and we play easy d6 a lot, which have this kind of exploding dice mechanic. Like I said, it's not a deal breaker, but they're thing that can get in the way, right? And if it's only the explosive dice, it's one thing. But like in the storyteller example, like there's multiple things in the dice mechanic that does make it like at some point like rolling dice become a chore in a sense, right? It can also be like when if you have to, but I'm gonna touch a bit on that later. Like if you have to, if it's too complex to know what dice to roll, that can also be one. Mathy or complex resolution. The example I would use, one example that would come to mind right away with complex resolution would be like the Genesis system, right? With the Star Wars, with the funky dice, right? That have been made. You roll your dice, and now like the game has to stop because you have to interpret what the hell you roll, right? Like, oh, I got like 2 advantage and a triumph and 2 dark force, but 1 light force, and like, okay, now what does all that mean, right? There's no role play possible anymore. Another example, it's by default in the BRP system, and I think most games that use the BRP system fix that. But by default in BRP, you have a critical success when you roll like below 5% of your of your skill. So not when you roll below 5%, when you roll below 5% of your skill. So if you have a skill of 67, now you roll and you roll a 4. Oh, is that okay? Is that 60? Is that 5% of 67? And now you kind of like to do like you kind of have to do this math kind of thing, which is kind of weird, right? And again, depending like, and some people are good at math, and I'm not bad at math myself. I can do 5% pretty easy, but it does take you out of the moment. It does take you out of the character mindset. Now, like you're doing something else. You're doing some math at the table, so not a great system. Like it get in the way of role play, right? The on for endless modifier, that's like the system that, oh, I got a +1 here, +2 here. Like I often like talk about the Witcher RPG, which is, I think it's an awfully designed RPG. Because not only that, like you have like a bunch of things that's gonna get used modifier that you need to stack, but also a modifier all over the place. This thing is gonna give you a +1, this thing is gonna be a +3, this thing is gonna be a +4, this thing is gonna be a +2, right? That's also something that like is maddening. So if you're looking to stack those modifier, uh, now you're no longer in character mindset. You're just looking at your character sheet, trying to remember everything. Oh, did I forget something, right? And too many subsystem. That's something that a lot of the old school D&D was guilty of. When you want to do one thing, you have to roll this d20. Oh, but if you do this other thing, it's going to be, and you have to roll d20 and roll I, but on the other thing, it's going to be, you have to roll low. On this other thing, you have to roll a d100. On this other thing, you have to roll a d6. And sometimes it's usually not very justified. Like I do prefer a system that is homogenized, that you have like one way of doing things, right? When you make, okay, you have to make a roll, this is how you're going to make a roll when you make a roll, right? I don't like when it's this is how you're going to make a roll in that context, but in that context, it's going to be this way, and can be something else too than rolls, right? Sometimes so too many subsystem, it's something that is going to take you out of the character mindset. It's going to get in the way of role play. Immersion breaker. This, like the overly luck based dice mechanic, that's the big one for me with the d20, right? You play a character that is supposed to be good at something, and you go and you do it, but you roll a 2. Okay, you fail, right? Happen. You try again next turn, like, or something else next turn that you're supposed to be competent at, and then you roll a 3, and then you roll a 1, right? And at some point, it's so like, and you can have like those streak of bad luck, and like, what the heck? My character is supposed to be decent at that, right? And there's always a thing like, well, maybe like you shouldn't roll for everything, and that's true, but sometimes you should roll for something, right? And in those like D&D, like if you look at that, like you're gonna have like you can have like usually your character, like if you're not super high level, your character might have like a +1, +2 for your attribute, something you're good at, and then if you're proficient, you're gonna have another +2. So you're gonna have like a +4 or +5 maybe, right? But then you roll a 20-sided dice. So like the portion of the dice, like your result, the portion of the your result that is due to the dice is so disproportionate compared to the portion of what your character does. And then you also have like, oh, now you have like this critical success, and oh, I rolled to seduce the dragon, right? This kind of like goofy stuff. You roll on that 20, right? And then people like think you expect you to succeed at anything. That's obviously like also like a player problem. But those like very luck based, just a streak of bad luck or a streak of good luck can take you out of character mindset, because you don't, you don't expect it. It's too unprevisible, and now like you're back just at looking at the dice and getting excited from the gambling aspect of the game, right? Mechanics requiring too much of other player than the one triggering them. Okay, that's a bit complex. What I mean by that, again, I'm going to use D&D for example on that. You cast a spell in D&D, right? You don't roll oftentimes, but the target of the spell have to roll. So now you have this thing that you have to communicate to the other player what they need to do, right? Oh, you express that you cast Entangle. That's the example we had in the game recently. So now the GM, like if there's a player casting, now the GM has to know basically every spell, because like, okay, what does Entangle do exactly anymore? Like now you have like the communicating like the range and the area of effect and the type of saving throw that you have to do, and can you do a saving throw again next round, right? You have to communicate all this information, all those mechanics that there's no way to communicate really in character, right? So it's a lot of information that, you know, if you want to have like complex spell and stuff like that, the load should be on the caster, because then the player can know his character and can know what his ability does. But in the system, now it's like not only the caster need to know the ability, but the target of the spell need to kind of know how to you react to it. Otherwise, you have step of the character space, of the character mindset, and now okay, now I'm gonna talk about mechanics for a few minutes, so I can explain you the spell that I did, how it works, and what it does, so you can interact with it. If you look at a system like EZD6 that does, and obviously like EZD6 is often gonna be like my example of good game, because there's a reason we play a lot of it, right? It doesn't get in the way of roleplay. The way to do magic is free form. So you just like you make your roll and you just describe the effect of the spell. And there's no like spell list or anything. But just because of that, like now like the education is made there, right? There's no like system, there's no mechanic to try to go into, right? If you describe that you grow vine and have them roll around your leg. Okay, now like I get it. I'm entangled, and on the next round I can say, oh, I'm gonna try to break off the vine, and then I can do like a strength check, whatever. Right? It's instinctual. There's no like there's no predefined mechanics that we have to abide by, right? And mechanics encouraging the tactician mindset. That's a lot of like we see that a lot in games like Pathfinder, when they they the stacking of the stacking of feet and stuff like that, right? So when you have like and you kind of have to do that if you want to do, you know, it's assumed you have to do that, like in, did I say Pathfinder? Yeah, Pathfinder, that's the one I'm talking about. So now and also a lot of mechanics works on grid based system, you know, like D&D 4e was, I've been blasted for that. So again, this is like it assumed that when combat is gonna stop, when combat is gonna start, role play is gonna stop. You're gonna zoom out from your character mindset, see the world from up high, and now everybody's a perfect tactician, right? Or as good a tactician as the player can be. And now we're playing like this skirmish game on the board. So again, system design like that are not great for role playing game. Metagame driver, non-diegetic metacurrency. I list that in there. What I mean by non-diegetic is metacurrency that don't exist in the world. It's what diegetic mean. Unless I got the wrong word. I think I got the right word. So it's like the stuff like inspiration for like, oh, you made the GM laugh, or oh, you brought the pizza to the table to the session, so get this extra token that you can, this bennies that you can use, right? Those kind of stupid shit, right? In system, like when they tell you to reward player for making a joke and stuff like that, well, that's necessarily like breaking role play, because now like gonna try to, it's incentivizing people to be like Klaus Clown. So that's especially bad. There's some metacurrency I like. The karma doesn't bother me in ACD6. Actually, I actually quite like it. Because it's simple, right? You fail a roll, you get a point, and you can spend those points to oh, look at that. John Tate, thank you very much for the 10 pound with no comment, just a star. Thank you. So and I also like the momentum in Conan and the 2D20 Conan, because that represent like something that's happening in the scene right now. We're winning, so we're the success of somebody. You can build upon the success of your party member, and the momentum only stay for the scene, so you're incentivized to use it now, create cool stuff. So I like those. But and even like a stuff like a burning wheel has a lot of metacurrency that you can use, and they're voted upon on the end of the session, right? And they're voted upon for stuff that is not roleplay related, which is gonna incentivize you to not roleplay, basically. Mechanics that require negotiation between GM and players. Some system encourage that, like, oh, describe what's gonna happen if you succeed or if you fail before the roll is made, right? No, I don't like that. Or if it's anyway, I think this one is like fairly self-explanatory. I don't want to go delve too long in that. I've already been like 20 minutes in. I'm trying to keep those short usually. System pushing genre emulation. That's it's games that have like a system like for example, like the Cortex Prime system. They're gonna talk about like a scene and camera cut and zooming in and spotlight, right? Because you're not simulating a world, you're simulating like making a TV show about whatever you're playing in, which is a very dumb concept. But or like sometimes like superhero games gonna talk about like panel. You can interact with the panel and with the, or you can do like a yellow box text and stuff like that, right? Like, oh, you have those sometimes those metacurrency that you can use, all this kind of thing, right? All those kind of thing that now, like, oh, I'm no longer in the mindset of my character. Now I'm a comic book writer, or I'm a TV show director, or stuff like that, right? All those things are mechanics. When you see those in a game, it's a pretty big red flag that this is not a real role-playing game. The person that wrote this that wrote this game is didn't understand what role playing is, basically. So I and this is what I meant by this in this whole presentation. This was the old point, right? It's like those, when you see those mechanics in the game, so the flow killer, the metagaming enabler, or the I forgot the other one. Should I go back? The flow killer, the immersion breaker, and the metagame driver, right? When you see those in a game, you know that something is. There you go. I lost my slide. You know that something is afoot, and I'm gonna stay there because I just realized that I don't have like a. Like I said, I just reinstalled OBS before starting the stream because of a technical problem. So now, like, I have like half the screen not used, and we have to live with it. I'll go to the chat now. Thank you for watching the presentation. I hope this was useful. It's going to be useful for people like trying to select a game or write a game. And also, I want to say that I'm probably going to do another VR marathon on Saturday. So I'm probably going to take another like a role-playing advice video video reaction marathon. And on Saturday do that. I don't know what time exactly, so stay tuned for that. I'll see if I can go longer than last time. I don't know if I want to. Hello, yeah, crap. Glad you could show up. And Elf Hunter. And greeting and felicitation. I don't know where you see felicitation to, but thank you. Hello, John Tate, Dave, the GM. 5e for comedy. Like, we've playing this game of 5e, and I think there's some like, and the whole thing was like, can we make 5e works for roleplay? And there's challenging element to it. I'm not gonna lie. Paranoia for the win. Send in the clones. Could you, if you were trying to, if you were trying to really play Paranoia in the mindset of a character that live in that world, right? That is a real person, a real human being. Would the game be very differently played? I suspect it would. It could be an interesting challenge, right? If you try to like people like kind of go with the goofy premise with Paranoia, but what if you were just trying to say like, you know what, I'm this guy, is living in this world. Oftentimes you don't really have a character; you're just a clone with some stat and stuff like that. You're not like you're not a person with an history and goals and motivation, really, right? Other than maybe surviving. Oftentimes not really that. Like trying to, but it could be an interesting to. It'd be a perversion of the system. Like Paranoia is almost like more a party game than a role playing game in my mind. Hello, Child Nemesis. You have Paranoia, the game. I hope. Fear is the flow killer. That's a big one, but that's not a mechanic one, right? That's like a fear, like people that are afraid of having a bad turn, right? Or people are afraid that their action is going to turn as they want, and now like they try to test drive their turn, right? Like Yakrep say, yeah, that kills the flow for sure. Truth Nemesis say you need to ask yourself, am I playing a game to roll dice or role play? Exactly. John Tate say, I have thought about a cipher system for 40. I'm not familiar with it. I know like Rick's, I think like it, from 28mm RPG. It's fiddly spending points from pool, but mechanics are 100% player facing. Maybe good for I trust playing. Like I said, I don't have any experience with it. The games that I've used it usually have kind of setting that I'm not very into. But so I cannot really speak of it. My own solo system, Dandelion, is I love that name. It's fixed odds. Run roll with 4 direction for anything. That's interesting. I don't know what I'm not sure what that means, but that's interesting. This stream is sponsored by EasyD6. Well, it should be. We should have a sponsorship. Hellos on Alars. Diegetic is the right word. Yeah, good for me. Used for sound in movie and stuff. I don't know if the line is as clear metacurrency. Like if the metacurrency represents something in the world, right? Like effort that you exert and stuff like that. Like because a metacurrency, like I like my metacurrency not to be too meta, right? We had the discussion on the Discord at some point, but like I'm okay with having resource that we can expand, which would be like the currency aspect. If this resource is like, oh, you're expending effort, or you're expending some resource that you own, or you karma is kind of like a metaphysical resource, right? Something like you don't really you cannot see, but technically it's something that you fail some, you win some, I guess. But like inspiration, for example, in the ND5e, or you get an inspiration, you can use it for whatever, whenever, right? And it has no correlation to anything in the world. It has like it's just a token that you have. It's just like a plaything that you have that you can use, but it doesn't represent anything in the world. So those are the one I don't like. Yakrepse argue that if it's diegetic, it's not a meta currency. Yeah, it's just a resource. Yeah, that's basically what I was saying there, right? It's like people still call it like meta currency, I guess, like became like kind of a, but yes, it's a little less meta. Hello, Tyler. A unique one that always irritated me is Blade in the Dark retcon mechanics. That's a very good one. That's a very good one. That's like the negotiation. That would be like in the negotiation part, right, with the GM, between GM and player. Like, oh, but actually, I did that in the past, right? And now everybody has to rewire what they knew of the world of the game, right? Or it can also like fit in the genre emulation because they say like, oh, we want to do heist movie. That's sort of trying to like you watching Ocean 11, and you see the eyes going on, and then it's cut in with like the preparation they did to get ready for it, right? That's what they're trying to emulate. So it's genre emulation. but it's a very good example of that. It's not role play friendly, right? It's works well for movies, but what we're trying to do here is something else. RPG mechanics occupy your bandwidth. Yes. You can only absorb a limited amount of information at any given time. You think about mechanics, you're not thinking about how to roleplay at the same time. Exactly. You're not thinking about like the reality of the world. Like you're not seeing through the eyes of your character. You have to like come back in here and around the table, look at your character sheet, maybe look at a book, look at an aid, right? And you can accept some of it, and there's some game you're gonna get better at, right? You can have, if you want to play a crunchier game, at some point when you get more familiar, the mechanics become more instinctual, right? Like when it's a new game, there's a little more complex. It's gonna occupy a lot more of your mental bandwidth. But at some point you can get better at it. But some games you just like it's always gonna be like a very taxing to play. Stay mad, Ben Whitlet. Yes, Ben Whitlet. No closing argument. No, I guess not. You're right. I kind of missed a closing argument. I could have took my like third slide and put it at the end. That would have been better. Mr. Max, how would you describe the flow or flow state? I lost connection for a bit, so apologize if you already mentioned it. What I mean by the flow is like when we talk a lot about keeping your turn short, right? Keep the turn short and have more turn, right? So there's always something that is feeding up. You imagine the world being a living place. Like you try to see the world through your eyes of the eyes of your character, and there's always have to like the world keeps living, keep moving. The world doesn't is not on pause. So the more you can keep feeding the fantasy, the more you keep the flow alive. So that's part of the reason why you always want to have like shorter turn and more turn, because then you can just do like the one thing. You role play in the present, right? Don't tell me the next thing you're gonna do for the next 10 minutes. Tell me what you're doing now, so everybody at the table can picture it, and then the next guy interact, and then the next guy and the next guy, and there's always something else that you can like add to the fiction, right? So you don't come back to a point when there's nothing coming up, because now we're dealing with the mechanics, and now like I either like to pose the wall, step back out, and then like I'm just you kind of get like you say like you're it's funny because like you lost connection for a bit. That's what happened when you break the flow. That's basically what happened, right? You have this mental connection to the game world that is always fed by everybody at the table, the description of everybody at the table, until you hit this like roadblock that now like let alone like somebody like open a book and go look through it, right? Now like, oh, okay, now like the connection is interrupted. There's buffering, right? That should be a term. But that's what I'm talking about, like by the flow of the game, right? Keeping the world, keeping the simulation that we're creating together fed, right? Always like putting woods in the fire, like fuel in the fire, right? To keep it like in the fire of the simulation, to keep it going. That's what I'm talking about. So now, so what do you think about learning mechanics? How much learning should be accepted before it's just way too much homework? I'm okay with a game being difficult and require you to learn the mechanics. Um, but I think that's kind of like a personal call, like a table call, right? You shouldn't play a game that is more complex than you can manage. But I also like a game that has a little more like fiddly bit that I like a game with a little more crunch that I can sink my teeth into sometimes. But but also like it need to be well designed enough that even if you don't know everything, you can make assumption about the mechanics, and then you can go look after a session and, oh yeah, that was right. It was close enough, right? Like if the game is well designed, you can usually like kind of make educated guess about like the part you don't remember, and it's gonna be close enough that it works, right? Captain Conaway say, good presentation. Oh, thank you. I've been struggling with my own system due to a few of those points, actually. My D100 system include both reaction roll, dodge, and attack as example, but also other reaction. It's something to consider, right? Sometime, like I say, like you can have some of those. It can be worthwhile sometime, but if you have too many of those, there's probably something there. And sometimes also, if you don't have one of those, like maybe consider like, well, is there something that I can do instead, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Oftentimes is the question, right? It's possible that it is, but they're kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily red flag, kind of yellow flag, right? Just like be careful here. So Space Rolly was saying to Elf Hunter about when is the floats when in the zone. Yeah, that's usually people will use about the flow state. But in role playing games, like I would say it's when you're immersed in the sense like being the flow is like it's what people call being immersed. You can be immersed in like in coding and stuff like that when you're in the flow state, when you're in the zone, right? But what I call immersed in role playing is like when you're staying in character and feeling like you're in that world, right? Living in like you're that character in that world. Kid, also, I don't think any particular mechanics is insurmountable. It's the weight of multiple incongruent mechanics that ruin roleplay. Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying there, right? You like none of them like are per se necessarily like well, some of them might be like a deal breaker, but like they're more like be careful. As an example, when an enemy does something to your character, you always trigger you into the spotlight, basically giving you a turn to react to what they do. Try to run out of fireball. Try to run out of fireball counter. Try to run out of fireball counter. I'm getting a bit lost in the last part of the sentence there. You might miss a word or might just be retarded. But I like the I like the I like when the somebody does something to you and you react to it and that's your turn, but that should be your turn, right? That's you take your turn there. Don't have that on top of a regular turn afterward because then it's gonna be like a lot of back and forth and stuff like that. If you can solve two people's turn at once, I think that's good. That's what I'm doing with Bastard Sword. Dice Tales say Paradigm might play differently, but the absurdity of the setting and the disposability of the character would make it hard to play seriously. I think it would be hard to play seriously, but it could be interesting, at least as an experiment, maybe something to do someday. Elf Hunters, I'm interested in your game, Captain Conaway. Do you have a video on it? There you go. People like getting together, making stuff. Really being that guy would be incredibly dark. Yes, I think so. I played Pathfinder with a mythic point for a little while. It was just too much, constantly scrolling your character sheet to see all the 9 million ability you have. Yeah, I can imagine. There's constantly enough, there's already enough decision making in that game. I think there's a critical mass to be considered. Does your game benefit from having more resources to spend? It's always the thing. Like, it's always like, don't add something to your game just because you think it's, oh, it's cool, or, oh, I like this mechanic from those game. Like, does it fit the game? Does it fit what you're trying to do? Does it fit the tone? And at some point, is it too much, right? You're cooking a meal. You don't necessarily want to put every spice that you own, right, in that meal. At some point, it just becomes too much, and just everything's gonna taste the same too. So, endlessly expanding system hidden beyond a billion trade and subsystem. That's Pathfinder. Blade in the Dark is that garbage that seemed cool at first. Yeah, like Mothership. I don't know Mothership, but Blade in the Dark. Yeah, there's like it was some guy with some ideas, but it's almost like turning back to a board game more than a role playing game. It's like somebody that doesn't understand role playing idea of a role playing game. Flame Zombie say, "Yep, people keep telling me, oh, just do this instead of Shadowrun," and there are so few similarities. I wonder if these people play either. I don't know what you're talking about there. That's also something like bothers me. Like you said, oh, I have this problem with this game that I'm trying to solve. It's, oh, just play this game instead. It's like, well, that's something completely different that I'm trying to do. I'm suppressing a Shadowrun thread. I'll just agree. The subsystem are mostly from splat books. You are not supposed to use all of them, but people do. Yeah, user error. Out of suppressed Shadowrun experience, keeping Pandora's box closed tonight. Keeping, yeah. I never played Shadowrun. It's never been like the setting doesn't appeal to me, so I never got into it. We should have it in Discord. I'm talking about the Shadowrun. I want to try running it again sometime. There you go. Put a game together. Put a game up. I found there's some games that are seen as crunchy aren't necessarily, and the robustness of the rules set can support roleplay if the roles are uniform and diegetic. I 100% agree with that. And that's something I'm trying to do with Bastard Sword. I'm trying to have this game that is a bit on the crunchier side, quite crunchy, you could say, but in a way that does support roleplay. I don't know if I'm going to succeed. I'm trying to. Might be a partial success too, but I'm trying. Crunchy is often code. Sorry, I cannot speak anymore. Is often code for I don't want to read that. Yeah, but also like there's also something like sometimes just like mechanics that are badly named, mechanics that are badly explained, mechanics that okay, one pet peeve I have, for example, right? In we played a long time ago now, a bit of a Castle and Crusade, right? And it's a game I don't have necessarily problem with, but one thing that I hate is the way that they change the difficulty level based on the target number that you have to roll, right? Based on if it's a primary or secondary attribute that you have, right? So let's say like you're doing like a dexterity test, right? And dexterity is your primary. I might have the number wrong, but like if dexterity is primary, you're gonna succeed on a roll of 12 plus. If it's not a primary, you're gonna succeed on a roll of 18 plus. And I hate that because difficulty level should be based on the on the the world, right? What's happening in the world, not on the character. It's world facing, right? So, and it's also mean that now you have to adjust difficulty based on the different player. So if you have like let's say you have a chasm and a log that cross it, and the players try to cross on the log, right? Walk on the log to cross it, and you ask everybody to make a dexterity roll. So now you have to say, oh, so for you the difficulty is going to be 12. For you it's going to be 18. Oh, you have to say like, oh, for people that are primary in dexterity, it's going to be 12. For the other one, it's going to be 18 because those are kind of the base number. You can modify it, so you could say like, oh, it's going to be like, oh, it's raining, so it's going to be like 15 for those that's primary, and it's going to be 21 for those that's not primary, right? And it's annoying because now you have to express two difficulty challenge when you could just have said like, well, give a +6 to your primary. So now you can just say like the difficulty is 21, dexterity is your primary, so you add 6 to your roll, and that's it, right? Mechanically is the same, but just like the mechanics designed wrong, it's designed backward, right? So so you just make it like more cumbersome than it needs to be. So that's something that we see a lot of. Sorry, see people playing the same game and not knowing the rules like yeah, that's also like a problem. Like we see that like when Crispy do those review of those game, right? Oh, they're in session like 124 and they're still asking question about, oh, does that work again? Man, you're fucking session 124. At some point, what's wrong with you? So now I'll say what I define as a good RPG system. Use the same or similar mechanics for many different things. Yeah, homogenize for me is a big one. So you have a core mechanic and slight iteration on it depending on the task. Make it easy to remember. Slight iteration, but like you have to be careful with that also because like if you have two systems that are very similar but slightly different, that's almost worse because you're always gonna confuse the two. If you are like two completely different systems, it's maybe easier, like Palladium. Let's say if you do something in combat, it's going to be D20 base. If you do something out of combat, it's going to be D100 base. All right, that's fair. You're not going to confuse those two. But if you have like one thing again, Burning Wheel, you have the fight mechanic, right? When you script combat and stuff like that, and you have the same kind of system for social mechanics, but they're just like slightly different. And when they did Torchbearer, they homogenized the two, and it's Torchbearer is a much better game for that in that sense, right? It's a big improvement on that in that sense. But yeah, but usually like I'm big proponent of like having your system homogenized. Yeah. So now, remember, Nicolas didn't know how to calculate his attack and damage and sneak attack on his goblin rogue until session 3. Yeah, man. You know, he's Brazilian, so we have to be patient. Sarah Fish say, is a game too much if it has a 4-page just on what the dice roll mean? You would see that you would see that in like I guess like the Genesis system, right? But also, like, to be fair, sometimes like it could be also like badly written and be too long, and also like when you write and then people like put too much example, and 4 pages is a bit long, right? People put too much example. Like, is it 4 page like just the rules, or do you include like maybe there's some fluff in there and some example and some like exception and some padding, like, you know, so much when you write rules, so much of it, so much of the volume of the rules that you write is for idiots and for rule lawyers, right? People are going to try to take the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law. Like, clearly that's not the rule as intended, but now I have to explain, like, spell everything out, because if I don't like re-explain everything twice, covering every little angle, there's always somebody that's going to come in and say, oh no, actually according to the rules I can do that. No, that's according to rules as written, that's how it works. And so, like, come on, man, what you're in, like, people doing in bad faith. So you write rules, right? And, you know, sometimes you have to write example also for stuff that, but also sometimes you write something that you think it's clear for you, and it might be clear for 80% of people, but some people are going to need the example just because the way you worded stuff is not quite clear. So page count per se is not necessarily like the sole indicator. If you can explain it to somebody in a sentence or two, I think that's the better test, right? I like games that have a variance in difficulty between character. You don't want to learn magic, don't play a caster. You want more to sink your teeth into, there's a stuff to do. Oh yeah, variance in difficulty, yeah. Yeah, some character being more difficult to play. I agree with you on that. I think that's I don't think that's a bad design. Having some character that's simpler character to play and more complex character to play, I think that's good. For me, it's too much if it's the kind of mechanics you have to talk about. Yes. Yeah. If you every time you interact with the mechanics, you have to have a discussion about it. Yeah. I unleash a flurry of blow. You make a lot of attacks. You don't need to hear the paragraph about what flurry of blow does. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, like the badly named mechanics, right? Like the example always goes to like it's like fury of the small. There's no way to like you kind of have to state what it does or what it says, right? Because those names are like you could say like flurry of blow is not the worst, because yeah, exactly, you don't have to say like, oh, I use my flurry of blow. People would do that, right? Oh, I'm gonna use flurry of blow. Like, this one is actually well named, because you can just say like, I unleash a flurry of blow, or I do a flurry of or flurry is a bit weird term. Like, it's not natural language for most people, but you know, you can work it in a sentence and make it natural, right? Without having to discuss the mechanic. But people still do it. People still want to just like press the button, right? Oh, that's the button I'm pressing now. I'm triggering my flurry of blow. Captain Conway, being told the enemy tossed a fireball at you. Reflex save. Breaking my immersion. I don't want mechanics to force a response. I want to choose how to avoid the fireball. How my character would. Yeah, I get what you mean there. Like if with good system mastery and a system that is well homogenized, because also that's the point, right? In D&D, there's also this thing that sometimes it's gonna be reflex save to half damage or reflex save to completely avoid, or if you fail, there's all kind of variation like that. But in a game that would be like more homogenized, be easier to guess, and you could have like this reflex save that is like every time something happened to you that you think reasonably your character would have a chance to dodge, right? You could use that thing, right? You could say like, there's a fireball coming your way. Oh, I dodge behind the table. Then you make your roll, and then GM can educate, right? Uh, I think that would be better than just like, there's a fireball coming at you. Make a reflex save, right? Also, like, well, maybe I didn't do nothing. Maybe I just want to take it in, right? Why you tell me make a reflex save? Not like you're forcing me to react to it. So yeah, I get kind of your point. I guess I guess I think I'm getting your point. Oh, interesting. I never really considered the save problem, but it's always I've always played with them. Yeah, save just being a prompt for you to do something. You're given bonus for a character that drop prone to avoid certain attack or something. Is that taking like player agency? When you say like make a save for this, are you acting for the character, saying that he is defending? Player can describe how their character react if you can avoid a fireball by stepping behind a pillar, running out, raising a magic shield, bracing. Yeah. Hello, Bill. I'm just here to use all the splat books and get drunk, but I sold all of my splat book. Well, you can have a better time then. I was shocked after picking up Cyberpunk a few years ago, thinking Shadowrun was the Gonzo one for so long. Oh, really? Is Cyberpunk worse? Crunch and clunk need to be more clearly differentiated. Crunch should be there because it's adding something beneficial. Clunky is just underthought design. I would agree with that. I think you're onto something there. A game can be crunchy without being clunky. But yeah, I'm trying to separate the fluff section and the mechanics. I hate having to flip back and forth to find a rule because there's some novel in the middle. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. Like, I hate when games have too much fluff in them, to be honest. But I'm always the one saying, "Don't tell me a story," right? Just like I'm trying to read a rule book there. The monks ones tend to be flurry of blow, stunning fist, quivering palm, dim mac, if you want. Yeah, to be GCVD in Bloodsport. Yeah, they're not the worst name. Uh, okay, tends to be well written. I get what you're saying. Yeah, I cast a Skinner box at my player. They must press the button whenever it's their turn, denying any roleplay for 1d4 turn. A game need to have like this mechanic. Yeah, something needs to be done with that. I was thinking of making a react rule. The GM say react, the player must do something to avoid when they just describe. The wizard longs fire nail emanate mode of fire toward you. React. Um, I think you could have like in the rules that, or in the social contract, that they are allowed to react when something happened to them, when someone tried to do something to them without having to mentioning it, because just saying react is shorter than saying what do you do, but it's basically the same thing, right? It's basically like prompting them. You want to have like proactive player, and if you add like a word like that, like our rules that say like, oh, now react, you're gonna train them to only react when being prompted, right? you shouldn't make a point instead of like saying them like, no, you can be proactive. You can like something is trying to do something to you. You can try to react to it and have your mechanics have a place for that in every time as something is trying to do something to you. That would be my point on that. I don't know if it makes sense. Okay, there also, yeah, there's so many pop culture reference in Cyberpunk, especially in the new Red Edition. Oh, really? Really? But that's all off topic. Conway, I'm once again shilling Mitras. Lots of diegetic reactive action. Okay. Xnar Prime. Is finding woman in Klingon cosplay or Orc Tusk cosplay proof of being a manly RPG participant instead of a woke libtard 3-letter F word for bundle of stick? That's a fucking curveball. Woman in Klingon cosplay or Orc Tusk cosplay proof of being a manly RPG participant. I don't like cosplay. I'm not a fan of cosplay. So there, you lost me there. Good point. Well, I'm glad if it was helpful. At least for inspiration for your game. Oh, to look at Mitras. Yeah. I think I'm gonna wrap that up. Oh, it's almost an hour, guys. I'm trying to make those short, but I guess like I'm quite locus. Thank you for people that watch live, join me in the chat and commented. Thank you for people that are gonna watch on the replay. And like and subscribe and share. I try to make those videos shorter. I kind of fail on that one, but so they can be more shareable. But I guess like, the first half hour was mostly content. And sorry for the weird like only half screen being used. Yeah, I should have thought about it like when OBS crash. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Take care, guys, and I see you on Saturday, hopefully, when I'm gonna do this marathon again, probably, unless something comes up, right? Take care, guys. Bye.